slow down, you're gonna crash. Baby, you'll be screaming, it's a blast, blast, blast. Look out, you got your blinders on. Everybody's looking for a way to get real gone. I don't know how sensitive or insensitive that song being in front of this particular movie is.
You sang in front of the fucking Hiroshima bomb movie, and you didn't know, and you weren't sure it was sensitive enough. Just sing the damn song.
Whatever. Welcome back to StillerBros the Movies, where today we are going to be covering a movie that's a little bit on the lesser side of the how many people are actually excited for this spectrum.
Plenty of people saw the trailers because it played before every fucking thing.
So today we talk about Gran Turismo, a movie that is both a video game adaptation and a biopic, and also a bit of an original story.
Yeah. So this is based on the video game Gran Turismo, which is just a racing game. So how can you make a story out of a racing game?
Well, naturally you would typically make up a bunch of racers and then have them drive around in the cars from the game. But turns out there's a story that's somewhat realistically had a real person driving the cars from Gran Turismo and becoming an actual race car driver, so you've got yourself an arc to play with. So, we know nothing about the world of auto racing generally.
Yeah. We've seen Ricky Bobby, we've seen Ford v Ferrari.
And that's about all we can say in the long run of that. But, Jan Mattenborough... Shit.
I think that might be... Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay, Jan Mattenborough, I think that's correct.
That might be it.
Is... Apparently, his story is that he was a big-time racing fan. He wanted to be a race car driver for real. He mostly did... But because he was a poor kid from London, he decided to train using the Gran Turismo game as sort of a driving simulator. Then somehow a sweepstakes was started where they put Gran Turismo players into a special training program to see if they could actually become racers. He is now a professional race car driver to the point that he was actually his own stunt driver for this movie.
Yeah. And the movie, this movie is based on that story, which now made it all the more interesting when we first saw trailers for this.
Now, the thing is that this movie is interesting because it's a story that we never heard of before. But then there's also the fact that the director is Neil Blomkamp, of all people.
The Academy Award nominated director of District 9, Elysium, Chappie, and some indie horror movie that I don't remember. And it is an interesting thing for Neil Blomkamp because he has basically, since Chappie, so for about 7-8 years, he has not been in the studio system ever since Ridley Scott basically said, "Shove over, kid, I'm making Prometheus 2 to say goodbye to your Alien reboot."
Not the first time that Neil Blomkamp has had a space epic thrown away, that he's been working a lot on, thrown away because of...
Certainly not the last either, because his version of RoboCop was also shit canned.
But it's weird that this is a Blomkamp movie, specifically because Neil Blomkamp has only made sci-fi movies up until this point.
Other than that low-budget horror movie that I just mentioned earlier that I don't know the name of because I just didn't care.
But it's just weird that suddenly he's like, no, I'm gonna make a biopic. Now, it's not to say that you can't switch up your style every once in a while, because obviously there are a lot of directors that do a lot of weird things. We literally just talked about a couple weeks ago about Barbie, which is a movie from a director who has no consistent style because every movie she's ever made is completely different.
But this time around, it's interesting because he's made these very, very niche movies that kind of fit together because they both kind of take place in a similar part of the world in a similar dystopian society.
And they're all socially conscious sci-fi movies movies about poverty and prejudice and all kinds of other stuff that a filmmaker from South Africa would have a first-hand view of.
But this time around, it is probably the most reined in he's ever been as a filmmaker, because he's not falling back on his tricks of we just have a CGI character for most of the movie.
Hell, Sharpton Copley isn't even in this movie to my knowledge. And that's weird because he's been in every one of his movies.
Yeah.
So it's weird that that's happening. Playing the role that I assume Sharpton Copley would have been playing is Orlando Bloom in this.
Yes, we've got a few name actors in this movie. We have Orlando Bloom, David Harbour, and Jimon Hansu.
And those three aren't even the main character, though David Harbour did end up taking the line that everybody remembers from the trailers with "You just puked on my lawn."
Which, again, everybody's seen the fucking trailer for this because for the entire summer it has played in front of every fucking movie. Almost every movie we've seen for the last month and a half has had this trailer in front of it.
Long story short, it's very clear that if this movie does not do incredibly well, it's not because they didn't advertise it. It's just simply because a lot of people did. Well, the thing is, the trailers also have the old release date because this movie got pushed 2 weeks.
Yes, because the ongoing writers and actors strike, they have not been able to. The Sony pushed the release date back 2 weeks because of the strike, they can't have actors promoting it, even though there are still a few videos of them doing press briefly.
And it's kind of weird that they're not sending the real guy out to promote it. Like, he's not in SAG. He could easily be sent out to do interviews on the circuit. Like, hey, this is cool. This movie is based on my life.
Him and Neil Blomkamp would have to be the only two people they could send out because he serves as a producer on the film, and he's also he is a stunt driver, so he's not in SAG or WGA. And
Neil Blomkamp did not write this movie.
Not that would deter his ability to promote this movie, because he would be able to promote it as a director, obviously. But
it's just kind of weird that the studio. I mean, I'm glad the studios are not forcing anyone to cross any picket lines.
Although they could avoid that entirely by just paying your fucking writers and actors.
But it's weird that they didn't just have the guy who the movie is based on out in front of and be like, hey, I'm the guy the movie's based on. Let me do some interviews.
Although there's a possibility that he's just really good friends with the actor playing him, and is like, I'm not gonna fuck him over by scabbing without scabbing.
It's possible that that's what's going on.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really don't know what to make of this movie. It seems like it's got some interesting visual flair because Blomkamp actually includes some sequences in the trailer for the racing scenes where it seems to be like cross-cutting between him playing the game in his bedroom and him actually driving the cars.
It's going to be interesting to see, and it's just one of those things. But it just feels like it's going to be one of those movies in a good way, one of these kinds of movies in a good way. And just on a bit of a personal note, yesterday would have been our grandfather's 88th birthday, and just the trailers for this thing make it look like if this was 10 years ago, we would have been seeing this movie with him.
Yeah. This was the exact... Grandpa was a car guy, Grandpa was a movie guy. This seems like the exact kind of movie we would go to see with him all the time before we could drive ourselves. And so it's just a matter of will this feel like that kind of movie? And also the fact that Mario made $1 billion and The Last of Us got 24 Emmy nominations. We're going to get a lot of video game adaptations in the next few years, and whether or not they're good is going to be subjective. But it's going to be completely unnecessary because as long as they make money and as long as they get any kind of recognition, they are going to be, they're going to end up making more. Twisted Metal got kind of middling reviews from fans and positive reviews from critics, and Hicks. We will see what goes on with that. But video game movies are hitting a new renaissance, and maybe they'll be good, maybe they'll be bad.
I mean, they're filming Sonic the Hedgehog 3 without their fucking actors, because they can't have the actors on set. Again, pay your fucking actors and writers, and this could be over.
But yeah, this is, and the fact that this is only kind of a video game movie is what makes this an interesting thing. It's takes the name Gran Turismo, but it's not technically an adaptation of any of the games, and that's an interesting way to do this, and that seems like a good way to do this, because you can only saturate a brand so much. Granted, you can't do that with every video game. Like, I don't think it would be entirely interesting to do this as like the Yu-Gi-Oh movie.
I mean, there's a Tetris. I mean, it's kind of the plot to the Tetris thing that came out that Taron Egerton did earlier this year, but that's not really about. But that was more about the game being about the whole marketing of the game and stuff like that, I think.
Yeah,
so.
It wasn't. Yeah, that was not made as a Tetris, as a adaptation of the game Tetris. That was made as a, hey, this interesting thing happened on the way to Tetris.
But it is called Tetris, so it's got Tetris's name brand.
So, but yeah, other than that, I don't know what to make of Gran Turismo. It looks like an interesting action movie. I hope we have fun. That's it.
Yep.
So, see you after the jump. So that was pretty fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It was not a perfect movie, just a fun little sports biopic. I would say it's pretty on par with the likes of Cool Runnings when it comes to sports biopics.
It's very...
Although I imagine it's more true to the story than Cool Runnings is.
I mean, for one thing, they actually were like, hey, let's use the actual guy's name, which, for the record, sorry, his name is actually Jan Moderborough, and he's Welsh, not
British.
Well, not British. I need to make that abundantly clear, because I know that there is a very, very heavy distinction when it comes to the people who are actually from Wales and the UK.
Yes, yes. This is what we get for not properly doing research before starting to record.
Especially since a lot of this stuff is, but honestly, this is one of those cases where I think the lack of research actually helped us in our enjoyment of the movie, because it actually gave us a lot of leeway into, okay, how did this happen? What happened here? Did this happen? And we don't. And honestly, because it is a biopic, they're going to take liberties, and we don't know what happened in certain areas.
We do feel, and it really did assist in the fact that once we get into the third act, we really start to get to the edge of our seats, and we're really clenching our teeth at every single moment on the racetrack.
But when it comes to movies where the final where the third act race takes place almost entirely at the Le Mans Hunt Grand Prix, 24-hour Grand Prix, Ford v Ferrari still wins.
Yeah, because Ford v Ferrari, which is a kind of a hard thing to do, because we loved the hell out of Ford v Ferrari.
But I thought this was fun.
Yeah.
And even with a movie like this that Neil Blomkamp is making, he still manages to play with one of his favorite themes of classism.
Yes, obviously.
Though it's not as distinct as just the haves and the have-nots. This is, have-nots, though that is still part of this. It's also very much an elites versus the not so elites. These elites. We've got Jan facing off against these competitors that are presented to the audience as rich, privileged. They've basically been training for this their whole lives in real cars, and they see themselves as as better because they have been driving more cars, and they have had the privilege to do that.
Hence why we get our Johnny Lawrence style rival for the movie.
I don't know if any of that is true. I don't know. For all we know, the guy driving for that particular company was a real sweetheart to him, but
they had to make somebody but somebody had to be the asshole, and sorry, dude, it was you.
But I really liked the performance of the main guy, Archie. I liked the fact that when there's a scene early on when he's speaking with his love interest about Gran Turismo, and he's just kind of info dumping on her and she's looking at him with this admiration in her eyes, because she's clearly the kind of person who likes to watch as someone just info dumps about a thing they're passionate about. And he truly gives off that level of passion whenever he talks about this game, whenever he talks about racing in general. You truly feel like it. It's like watching a musician at work and just letting them play, and you see the passion in them.
And his performance is very subtle at times, but at the same time, he knows what kind of role this is, and he's playing it perfectly on match. This is one of his first big roles in anything, and he just knocks it out of the park. I can't wait to see what he does next.
And David Harbour as Jack, his trainer, is just really, really playing the grumpy old man thing to the hilt.
He is doing it. I spent pretty much the entire back half of the movie in my head comparing him to John Candy from Cool Runnings, where he's just this archetype, but he's awesome. But it's great, and he's a beloved character actor, and we want to see him continue to be this beloved character actor.
And even though it is very much a trope, a stereotype, you do feel like you really want this guy to go from the skeptic to okay, I'm a believer now. I mean, that's literally a line of dialogue in the third act from him, but still, it's fun to watch him go from the grumpy skeptic who's like, these gamer kids, they're never going to be able to run on in a real race car, but then he's just like, yeah, I believe in you now.
I mean, he's still David Harbour. You can't not like the guy.
He gets a lot of funny lines during the training montage, just from the sheer fact that David Harbour even as the angry kind of asshole, making you kind of feel like I want to like you, man. I really want to like you. You're just gruff and off, and I just feel like I relate to you in some ways.
Yeah, Jimon Hansu, for as small a role he has in this movie, is showing some acting range that we have not really seen of him.
Mostly because we've only seen him in action movies.
Yeah, we've only seen him in kind of blockbuster movies, so we have not seen him show off this range, and this is a really good, meaty role for him in particular.
Once again, the trailers would have you believe that this is a movie where the main focus is on the typical sports biopic of, you don't understand me, Dad. This is my life. This is what I want.
And then his dad comes back in the third act and is like, I'm proud of you, son. But
you think that's the focus from the trailer, but that's actually like a subplot.
No, his family does not play a massive role in the movie.
In fact, I think his brother only shows up for like a single shot in the third act.
Yeah, but really, what it's not about him trying to prove this to his family. His family is supportive to him.
Pretty much from the second he actually does gets what he wants.
Once he gets into the actual racing of it, once he goes to this thing, his family is all in on him. So it's not his family trying to put him down the entire time. It's his family, it's his dad knowing what kind of passion he has, but he knows that kind of passion can also lead to a lot of heartbreak along the way, and he doesn't want to see that happen.
And it's not a big focus of the movie, because the focus is more just this kid who is coming from nothing, who's coming from this background where nobody expects anything of him, and just trying to prove everyone who doubts him wrong, because it's like a lot of people are just thinking this kid just basically worked in a game for years and now he thinks he can drive a real car. It's like sending a guy out to war and all he's ever done for weapons and combat experience is played Call of Duty.
Obviously, that's two completely different things, but it is kind of a pretty good example of that.
I mean, in the long run, this kind of feels like if like this is the kind of movie they would make if suddenly a guy who made a viral YouTube video suddenly directed a movie and it won him an Oscar.
Yeah.
This would be the exact kind of movie they made. And Neil Blomkamp really, one of the things I really liked about the racing scenes that set it apart from most other race movies is the fact that he played with the fact that this is technically based on Gran Turismo by adding the HUD to a lot of the racing scenes.
Yeah, we got a lot of shots where we got the HUD, and we saw we saw where he was placing, and we got focused on which car was his, because that's something that can happen a lot in racing movies where
a lot of the cars look similar.
It's not filmed properly, you could lose track of the car.
And one of the things, and I really liked the fact that even establishing shots were told from the point of view of TV reporters, but I assume that that's what the Gran Turismo whole loading screen looks like when they're just like, hey, here's the race starting up.
Yeah, and also a lot of really insane shots in the racing sequences. Neil Blomkamp really seems to love the idea that he could film a lot of coverage with drones.
Somebody bought a drone and he liked it.
Somebody probably watched Ambulance and thought, I can do that.
And it's just kind of and the race scenes are fun. This is aiming for blockbuster status. This is not aiming for award show status.
Although if they just dialed it maybe in a little more on certain stuff, maybe it would be more Oscar baity.
I mean, one of the things that this movie really just does right is that it never loses sight of the fact that this character really believes in this, really wants this. Yes. And, I mean, at the end when they show kind of the side-by-side comparisons of what the actual people in the story looked like, you kind of get the feeling that they were like, okay, we're going to cast for a certain type. We're going to just kind of barely get someone who looks exactly like these people.
Which is not necessarily bad. There have been plenty of biopics where nobody looks like the actual people.
I mean, it doesn't bug me because because before we even sat down in this, I did not know who most of the people in this story were.
Some of them are completely made up, like Orlando Bloom's character is just like a composite character of like a bunch of different people in the story.
So it doesn't really bother me that a bunch of these characters do not look anything like the actual person that they're playing, mostly because once again they were clearly playing for a certain type in acting, and I really think that everybody played exactly how they needed to play.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's all I got. What about you?
I'm good.
All right, so that's it for right now. Gran Turismo is good. It's a really good sports biopic. If you're into sports biopics, if you're into racing, then yeah, give this one a shot.
Yeah.
But for right now, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave in the comments what you thought of Gran Turismo, based on a true story, in the comments below. And don't forget to tune in next time when I do not fight the lions. Bye.
Bye.